Ambassador Sarah Blake walked through the strange door made of pure energy. She felt a small shock as the alien machine scanned her body. The palace of the light people grew up around her like a living thing made of bright colors. The crystal walls moved up and down like the planet was breathing. The moving lights hurt her human eyes when she looked too long. Ambassador Blake, came a voice that sounded like tiny bells ringing. Queen Ethera wants to see you in the music room. Sarah nodded at her guide. The guide was a see-through being that looked like it had stars inside its body. The being could change from solid to pure light. After 3 weeks on planet Luminous, Sarah was still getting used to how these people talked with light patterns under their crystal skin. Their thoughts made their bodies glow in ways her training never taught her about. The music room was a big ball hanging in the middle of the palace. The walls looked like they were made from frozen songs. When Sarah walked in, Queen Ethera appeared from nowhere. Her body came together from scattered light pieces into the most beautiful being Sarah had ever seen. "Human ambassador," the queen said. Her voice made Sarah's bones shake in a good way. "You keep asking for our energy science. We have told you many times that your people are not ready for such power." Sarah had spent months getting ready for this talk. She studied every rule about talking to aliens that Earth scientists could find. The Luminous people were older than humans could understand. They had learned to grow their minds and control energy while humans were still learning to make fire. "Your Majesty," Sarah said. She turned on her translation machine to make sure her words sounded respectful. "Humanity has changed a lot since we first met other species. We have made friends with 14 different alien races. We have a good record of sharing technology safely." Queen Ethera's body flickered with patterns Sarah was learning meant doubt mixed with something deeper. A sadness that spoke of painful memories too hard to talk about. "We shared our gifts once before, human. The result was that an entire race died out. 3 star systems almost got destroyed." From behind one of the floating crystal shapes in the room, Sarah saw movement. A smaller figure was watching. Clearly young by the light people's standards. The child was looking at everything with the strong curiosity that all children have. The light patterns under her skin were different from the adults. More wild, more colorful, less controlled. "Princess Zara," Queen Ethera said without turning around. "You should not be listening to grown-up talks." The child stepped into view with that special mix of rebellion and guilt that seemed the same in young beings everywhere. Her light patterns showed what Sarah's training said meant curiosity and mild disobedience. "Mother," Princess Zara said. Her voice had the musical quality of her species, but with something Sarah couldn't figure out. "The human doesn't glow like the others who came before. Why is she different?" Sarah felt her heart jump as she realized what the princess meant. "Others who came before, Your Highness?" Queen Ethera's glowing body got darker with what could only be anger and old pain. "Zara, go back to your studies right now." But the princess stayed where she was. Her light patterns became more upset. The Void Seekers glowed with hungry light that hurt to look at. The Crystal Emperors blazed with cold fire that made the gardens die. But the child looked right at Sarah with eyes that seemed to have baby stars in them, has no light at all. "But somehow the palace sings differently when she's here." Sarah felt the weight of understanding fall on her like a heavy blanket. "Your Majesty, you're not just judging humanity based on our past. You're comparing us to other species who wanted your technology and used it to hurt others." "The Void Seekers were charming at first," Queen Ethera said. Her voice carried the weight of thousands of years. "Curious, creative, eager to learn. They said they wanted to use our energy science to make their civilization better, to explore the universe in peace with other species. Within one generation, they had turned everything we taught them into weapons. Princess Zara's light pattern suddenly changed to colors Sarah had never seen in any light person. Deep purples and golds that seemed to pulse with their own life. But Mother, the human's mind feels different when I touch it with my consciousness. She doesn't hunger for power. She hungers for understanding. Zara! Queen Ethera's form flared with alarm. You must never touch alien minds without permission. It's dangerous. It's not dangerous with her, the princess interrupted. Her young voice carried surprising strength. Her thoughts don't try to eat mine the way the others did. They sing with mine. Sarah stared at the child, understanding that something important had just been revealed. Princess, are you saying you can read my thoughts? Not read, Zara replied. Her light pattern went through confused swirls. More like dancing with them. Your mind makes music that harmonizes with mine instead of trying to overpower it. Queen Ethera moved protectively between her daughter and Sarah. Her form blazed with motherly alarm. This talk is over. Ambassador Blake, you will go back to your rooms while I talk with my advisors about what just happened. Sarah bowed formally, but as she turned to leave, she noticed Princess Zara watching her with a look that went beyond species differences. The look of a lonely child who had found something she didn't want to lose. The princess's light patterns had settled into steady blue and silver rhythms that Sarah's database said meant hope and curiosity. Your Majesty, Sarah said as she reached the room's exit, with respect, perhaps the reason the princess can connect with human consciousness is because we're not trying to take anything from you. We're trying to learn how to give. As the energy door closed behind her, Sarah heard Queen Ethera's voice, soft with uncertainty. Zara, what did you sense in the human's mind that was different? She dreams of bridges, Mother. Not weapons or conquests. Bridges that connect worlds without destroying them. Sarah spent the night in her rooms looking at every piece of history about the light people that Earth's alien scientists had managed to collect. The picture that came together was both amazing and heartbreaking. A species that had once been the galaxy's greatest bridge builders, sharing their mind growth technologies with dozens of civilizations, only to watch helplessly as those same gifts were twisted into tools for controlling and destroying others. The next morning, she was called not to the formal music room, but to Queen Ethera's private study. This was a more personal space where the crystal walls showed what appeared to be living memories. Scenes from light people history that played like three-dimensional movies in the air. Ambassador Blake, the Queen began. Her light pattern was quiet and sad. I owe you an explanation for yesterday's problems. Sarah settled into a chair that shaped itself to fit her human body. Another example of light people technology that guessed what you needed rather than just responding to commands. Your Majesty, I think I understand why you're afraid to trust younger species. The briefing materials mentioned the Void Seeker incident, but they didn't include details about mental contact. Queen Ethera gestured to the memory displays, which shifted to show a busy spaceport filled with beings Sarah didn't recognize. Tall, angular creatures whose bodies seemed to soak up light rather than reflect it. The Void Seekers were the third species we tried to help. They had developed impressive technology on their own and seemed to have the mental maturity for consciousness expansion. The scenes playing in the air showed light people teachers working with eager Void Seeker students, sharing techniques for energy control and mental improvement. Sarah watched the interactions with growing worry as she noticed subtle changes in the Void Seekers' behavior over time. They learned quickly, Queen Ethera continued. Her voice was heavy with old guilt. Too quickly, perhaps. Within months, they had changed our consciousness bridging techniques into methods for mental control. They began conquering other species, not through force, but by overwhelming their victims' minds with artificially enhanced psychic pressure. The memory displays shifted to show destroyed worlds. Their populations enslaved by beings who had learned to weaponize empathy itself. Sarah felt sick as she watched entire civilizations reduced to mindless slavery by creatures who had corrupted the Light People's greatest gift. The war that followed lasted 3 standard years, the Queen said. In the end, the Void Seekers turned their mental weapons on each other. They broke their own collective consciousness until their species simply stopped existing. The survivors died not from physical injury, but from the complete breakdown of their ability to maintain individual identity. Sarah closed her eyes, beginning to understand the weight of responsibility that Queen Ethera carried. And Princess Zara connected with my mind the same way your teachers once connected with the Void Seekers. Worse, Queen Ethera replied. Her light patterns showed deep anxiety. Zara's abilities are beyond anything we've seen in our species before. Her consciousness seems to exist partially outside normal Light People parameters. When she was born, the energy fields around her were so chaotic that our healers feared she wouldn't survive her first year. The memory displays changed again, showing a much younger Queen Ethera holding a baby whose light patterns were unlike anything in Light People biology. Wild spirals of color that seemed to reach beyond the boundaries of her small form. She's evolving, Sarah realized. Princess Zara isn't just unusually powerful for a light person. She's developing capabilities that your species has never had before. And yesterday, those capabilities allowed her to interface directly with human consciousness in ways that should have been impossible. Queen Ethera turned away from the memory displays. Her form reflected deep worry. Ambassador Blake, I must ask you a difficult question. When my daughter touched your mind, what did you experience? Sarah considered her answer carefully, knowing that her response might determine the future of human-Light People relations. I felt welcomed, Your Majesty. Like finding a missing piece of music I didn't know I'd been searching for. There was no sense of intrusion or control. More like 2 different instruments discovering they could harmonize. That should not be possible, Queen Ethera said quietly. Human consciousness operates on completely different frequencies from Light People awareness. The fact that Zara could bridge that gap suggests abilities that. She paused, her light pattern cycling through colors Sarah couldn't interpret, suggests abilities that could be dangerous if misused. But Your Majesty, Sarah finished, what if they could also be the key to safe contact between species? What if Princess Zara represents an evolution specifically designed to prevent the kinds of tragedies that happen to the Void Seekers? Before Queen Ethera could respond, an alarm began sounding through the crystal walls. Not the harsh mechanical sound Sarah would have expected, but a harmony that conveyed urgency and fear. Both women rushed toward the source of the disturbance, following corridors that shifted and flowed to guide them quickly through the palace. They found Princess Zara in the energy gardens, collapsed among crystal trees that pulsed with the planet's life force. The child's light patterns were flashing wildly, cycling through colors so fast they created a strobing effect that made Sarah's eyes water. Zara! Queen Ethera knelt beside her daughter. Her hands hovered over the child's form as diagnostic patterns played beneath her see-through skin. It's another episode. They've been getting stronger since you arrived, Ambassador. Sarah dropped to her knees beside the princess. Her medical training from her previous career as a field doctor overrode diplomatic rules. Your Majesty, this looks like brain overload. Has she been exposed to new energy patterns recently? Only your presence, Queen Ethera replied, then stopped as the meaning hit her. You think contact with human consciousness is causing these episodes? Not causing, Sarah said, studying the way Princess Zara's light patterns seemed to be reaching beyond her physical form. Amplifying. I think she's trying to evolve, and the process is overwhelming her current brain pathways. Princess Zara's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with colors that shifted like northern lights patterns. In her small hand, she clutched something that caught the garden's crystal light. A pendant that seemed oddly familiar to Sarah, though she couldn't place why. "Help her," Queen Ethera whispered, her royal composure cracking with motherly desperation. "Please, Ambassador. If your species' consciousness is somehow connected to what's happening to my daughter, help me save her." Sarah knelt beside Princess Zara in the crystal garden. Her medical training fought with the diplomatic voice in her head that whispered about the terrible consequences of interfering with an alien royal family. But the child's chaotic light patterns and difficult breathing made the choice clear. Politics could wait until after she made sure Zara survived whatever was happening to her. "Your Majesty, I need to examine her brain pathways," Sarah said, pulling out her bioscanner. "The readings I'm getting suggest massive electromagnetic activity in her brain, but the patterns are unlike anything in human brain science." Queen Ethera's form flickered with anxiety as she watched Sarah's equipment interface with her daughter's alien biology. "Our healers have tried everything. The episodes began 3 months ago and have been getting worse. We thought it was a developmental disorder. Some light people children experience difficulty controlling their energy output during adolescence." Sarah frowned as her scanner's readings painted a picture that challenged everything she thought she knew about light people biology. "This isn't a disorder, Your Majesty. Princess Zara's brain is developing entirely new pathways. Ones that seem designed to process multiple types of consciousness at the same time." "That's impossible," Queen Ethera said, though her tone suggested hope rather than dismissal. "Light people consciousness exists on a single frequency band. We've never been able to interface directly with alien thought patterns." "Then Princess Zara is evolving beyond traditional light people limitations," Sarah replied, watching as her scanner detected energy signatures that shouldn't exist in any known biological system. "The question is whether her physical form can handle the transition." Princess Zara stirred. Her light patterns momentarily stabilized into colors that seemed to represent pain and confusion. Her small hand tightened around the pendant she'd been clutching, and Sarah noticed that the artifact was beginning to resonate with the same frequencies her scanner was detecting in the child's brain activity. "Princess," Sarah said softly. "Can you hear me?" Zara's eyes opened, but instead of the chaotic northern lights patterns from before, they now contained something that made Sarah's breath catch. Reflections of her own consciousness, as if the child's evolving awareness was creating a mirror for human thought. "Ambassador," Zara whispered. Her voice carried harmonics that seemed to come from multiple sources. "I can see your memories. The healing you learned when others were hurt. You saved people on worlds where the light was wrong and the air tasted of metal and fear." Sarah's hands trembled as she realized Princess Zara was accessing her experiences as a field medic during the Centauri colony crisis. Memories she'd never shared with anyone, not even in her diplomatic briefings. "How is that possible?" "The bridge remembers," Zara said, lifting the pendant with effort. "It's been sleeping in our family for so long, but when you came, it started to sing again." Queen Ethera stared at the artifact in her daughter's hand with growing amazement. "Zara, that's just an old family heirloom. It's been in our vaults for 15 generations." "It's more than that," Sarah said. Her archaeological training recognized details she'd missed before. The pendant's crystal structure included design elements from at least 3 different technological traditions, and its quantum resonance pattern suggested manufacturing techniques that no single species could have developed alone. Princess Zara struggled to sit up. Her light pattern stabilized as she focused on the pendant. It's a piece of the Bridge of Worlds, Mother. The artifact our ancestors created to connect different kinds of consciousness without conquest or control. That's a myth, Queen Ethera protested, though her tone suggested she was beginning to doubt her own words. The Bridge of Worlds is a legend from the earliest days of our civilization. Ambassador Blake, Zara said, extending the pendant towards Sarah with hands that still shook from her recent episode. Touch it. Let it taste your thoughts the way it tasted mine. Sarah hesitated, acutely aware that she was potentially about to trigger some kind of first contact event that could reshape galactic politics. But Princess Zara's trusting expression and Queen Ethera's desperate hope decided her. The moment her fingers made contact with the pendant's surface, the garden around them exploded with light. Sarah's consciousness expanded beyond anything she'd experienced, connecting not just with Princess Zara's evolving awareness, but with something vast and ancient that had been waiting eons for this moment. She saw flashes of light people history. The creation of the bridge by the first generation of consciousness explorers. It's used to facilitate peaceful contact between radically different species. And its deliberate breaking when war threatened to corrupt its purpose. The bridge was shattered and scattered across the galaxy, came a voice that seemed to speak from the pendant itself, carrying the wisdom of countless civilizations. Waiting for a time when species would again seek connection rather than conquest. Through the expanded awareness, Sarah sensed other fragments of the bridge calling out from distant worlds. Pieces held by species she'd never heard of, all resonating with the same longing for unity and understanding. But most importantly, she felt the purpose for which the artifact had been created. Not to grant power over other minds, but to create harmony between different forms of consciousness. The child is the key, the bridge whispered. Its communication bypassed language entirely. Her evolution allows her to interface with consciousness types that normal light people cannot perceive. Through her, the bridge can be made whole again, but only if wielded by those who seek to build rather than destroy. Princess Zara's light patterns had settled into the most beautiful display Sarah had ever seen. Complex shapes of color that seemed to represent the mathematical foundations of empathy itself. The child was no longer struggling with her evolving consciousness. Instead, she was embracing it, becoming something new and wonderful. Mother, Zara said. Her voice now carried the harmonics of both light people and human consciousness at the same time. The ambassador's people aren't like the void seekers. They dream of bridges, not weapons. And with the bridge fragments, we can teach the galaxy how to connect without consuming. Queen Ethera stared at her daughter in wonder, then at Sarah, who was still processing the implications of what had just occurred. You activated an artifact that has been dormant for 15 generations. An artifact that our greatest scholars believed was purely mythological. Sarah released the pendant, feeling its glow fade, but sensing that the connection it had created between her consciousness and Princess Zara's would remain. Your Majesty, I think Princess Zara's evolution isn't random. I think she's becoming exactly what the galaxy needs. A bridge between different forms of consciousness that can prevent the tragedies of the past. Princess Zara smiled. Her light patterns now stable and radiant with health. The bridge showed me the coordinates, Ambassador. There are 7 other fragments scattered across 7 different worlds. And each fragment is waiting for someone like you. Someone who seeks to understand rather than to conquer. As the implications of the revelation settled around them, Sarah realized that her diplomatic mission had just transformed into something far more significant. the beginning of a quest that could reshape how every species in the galaxy related to one another, guided by a child whose evolution had unlocked the key to consciousness itself. The revelation of the bridge fragment's true nature sent shockwaves through the Light People collective that resonated far beyond the crystal sanctum. Within hours, scholars and historians were poring over ancient texts that most had dismissed as mythology, while the High Council convened emergency sessions to debate the implications of Princess Zara's transformation and Sarah's ability to activate dormant artifacts. "The prophecies speak of a walker between worlds," said Elder Mithros, the oldest member of the Light People Council. His ancient form flickered with patterns of deep contemplation. "One who would come from beyond our light, carrying the gift of harmony rather than the hunger for dominance." Sarah sat in the council chamber, acutely aware that she was the first non-light person ever permitted to attend such a gathering. Princess Zara stood beside her, the pendant now glowing softly with a light that seemed to bridge the gap between human and Light People consciousness. "With respect, Elder," said Councillor Vexus, whose skeptical light patterns made his position clear, "we've heard such claims before." The Void Seekers also seemed peaceful initially. "How can we be certain this human won't follow the same path toward corruption?" Princess Zara stepped forward. Her evolved consciousness allowed her to speak with authority that belied her young age. "Because I've touched her deepest thoughts, Counselor. The ambassador doesn't hunger for power over others. She hungers for understanding with others. There's a fundamental difference in brain architecture between conquerors and bridge builders." Queen Ethera, who had been silent throughout most of the debate, finally spoke. "The child speaks truth. I have reviewed the memory crystals from our encounters with previous species, and the consciousness patterns Ambassador Blake displays are unlike anything we've encountered before." Sarah cleared her throat, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her. "Your Majesty, members of the Council, I understand your caution. But Princess Zara has shown me something through the bridge fragment that changes everything. This isn't just about sharing technology or forming alliances. It's about evolving beyond the cycle of fear and domination that has plagued the galaxy for millennia." She activated her portable holographic display, showing the star charts that Princess Zara had somehow downloaded from the bridge fragment during their connection. There are 7 other fragments scattered across different worlds, each one held by a species that has either been waiting for contact or has given up hope of peaceful interaction with others. The bridge isn't just a communication device. It's a consciousness network that can teach entire civilizations how to coexist without losing their individual identities. Elder Mithros leaned forward. His ancient eyes reflected patterns that seemed to contain the weight of eons. "And you believe human consciousness is compatible with this network?" "Not just compatible," Princess Zara interjected. Her light patterns blazed with excitement. "Essential. Human brain architecture includes something we Light People lack: the ability to maintain individual identity while simultaneously empathizing with radically different thought patterns. That's why the bridge responded to Ambassador Blake's touch." Sarah felt a chill of understanding as the implications became clear. "You're saying that humans were meant to be part of this network? That our species evolved specifically to serve as bridges between different forms of consciousness?" "Not meant," Queen Ethera said thoughtfully, "but capable. The galaxy has been waiting for a species with the right combination of curiosity, empathy, and individual resilience to serve as translators between consciousness types that couldn't otherwise communicate." Councillor Vexus still looked skeptical. "And what if this human's good intentions aren't shared by her species? What if humanity as a whole proves as destructive as the Void Seekers?" It was Princess Zara who answered. Her young voice carried wisdom that seemed to come from the bridge itself. Then the network will remain incomplete, and each species will continue to face the darkness alone. But if they prove worthy, if they can embrace the responsibility of being consciousness bridges rather than consciousness conquerors, then the galaxy will finally have what it's been missing. A way for different forms of awareness to learn from each other instead of fearing each other. The council deliberated for hours. Their light patterns created complex webs of communication that excluded Sarah from their decision-making process. But when they finally reached consensus, Elder Mithros spoke with the authority of unified judgment. Ambassador Blake, he said formally, we grant you permission to seek the other bridge fragments, with Princess Zara as your guide and companion. However, this permission comes with conditions. Should any human prove incapable of handling the responsibility this network represents, should your species choose conquest over cooperation, the Light People Collective will ensure that the bridge remains forever fragmented. Sarah stood, feeling the weight of her species' future settling on her shoulders. I understand, Elder, and I accept the responsibility on behalf of humanity. Princess Zara moved to stand beside her. The pendant in her hands now pulsed with steady rhythms that seemed to represent hope and determination. The first fragment calls from the Helix Nebula, she said. Her evolved consciousness interpreted signals that normal light people awareness couldn't perceive. A species called the Resonant Minds has been guarding it for 3,000 years, waiting for someone who could prove that consciousness expansion doesn't have to mean consciousness domination. Queen Ethera approached them. Her regal bearing softened by maternal pride and worry. Zara, are you certain about this path? Once you leave Luminous as part of this quest, you can never return to being the princess you were before. I was never meant to be that princess, Mother, Zara replied. Her light patterns displayed the complex geometries of someone who had found their true purpose. I was meant to be something new. The first of a generation that doesn't see differences between species as barriers, but as opportunities for growth. As preparations began for their departure, Sarah realized that her simple diplomatic mission had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. A quest to reunite the fragments of an ancient consciousness network, guided by a child whose evolution represented hope for peaceful coexistence between radically different forms of intelligence. In her final transmission to Earth, Sarah wrote, I came here seeking technology and trade agreements. Instead, I've discovered that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy might not be our innovation or our determination, but our ability to build bridges between minds that were never meant to understand each other. Princess Zara and I are about to embark on a journey that could reshape how every conscious species relates to one another. The universe is vast and full of minds we can't imagine. But perhaps, with the right connections, we don't need to imagine them. We can simply learn to harmonize with them. The bridge fragment pulsed with approval, and somewhere in its quantum harmonics, Sarah could hear the whispers of 7 other fragments calling across the void, waiting for the walker between worlds to bring them home.